Today I'm joined by Colin Cuthbert, Elouise Paul, and Laura Hopes. Thank you so much for joining me, everyone. It'd be good if we just go quickly around the room, just do a quick intro. I'm sure everyone knows who you are, but I'll start with Colin. If you do a quick intro to you, Colin.
Quick intro, I'm Colin Cuthbert from EOS, Eustone Ayres Payroll Company. So that's me.
Brilliant. And you, Elouise?
I'm Elouise. I'm the director of 360 Digital. We're an outsourced recruitment marketing agency.
Amazing. And Laura?
Yeah, I'm Laura Cole/Hopes, depending on whether you know me married or prior. I'm the owner of a recruitment training business called Hopes Consult.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you. And I'm Darren, CRO at APositive, if anyone wants to know that. So today we're talking about scaling smartly, focused on ops, leadership, and branding. What better way to start? I suppose I'll start with you, Laura. So when you're thinking about scaling a business, what's the first area leaders often underestimate?
Yeah, I think a lot of the agencies that are in growth mode that I work with, they have this amazing first year where it's just them and them and their co-founder or whatever, and they're just on the tools and responsible for bringing in the billings, and they have this great first year, and then they want to grow, right? And I think it's the people element, the amount of structure and process that needs to go into actually building and growing a team. It's very easy when you're just responsible for billing on your own, and then suddenly, you're responsible for other humans. And I think there's that element of kind of two steps back to start going forward again. And I think, then you've got that coaching piece, but you've still got to be bringing in the revenue because you've got used to bringing in the revenue. You've got clients to service. So for me, I always see it's that second year of like, oh, now we've added headcount and now we've got more headaches. It's always the feeling for a lot of founders, I think, of wanting to scale, but then suddenly the workload seems to have tripled because of the nature of managing people and trying to get them performing as well.
Yeah, good. Anyone else want to add?
I think you said it all there, Laura. But I think to add to that one, I mean, obviously, when you are scaling and growing, or even if you're just starting, I think the big one for me is actually cash flow. And I often see in businesses, not just in the recruitment sector, the finance function tends to be the weaker function because we're chasing after the dollar or chasing after the customer. And so I think cash flow is a big one. Of course, you've got the overheads. And if you're recruiting, you're looking at placing an individual in a role, but as you look behind you, it's like you need to account management, you need to be doing marketing, coaching, payroll, onboarding, invoicing. So there's so much to think about. I think that is the piece that the back office or the middle office that often gets put to the side as a company's growing.
And I think from a brand perspective too, it's a real mindset shift from relying on your personal brand to then relying on a company brand. And your company brand does need to be able to stand on its own at a certain point. We 100% advocate for people relying on their personal brand in those early days. But as an example, we've got a client at the moment that's never invested in marketing. They're ready to go. They want to hire people. They want to change the demographic of consultants they have in their agency. And they're ready to grow and scale, and they are struggling to bring people on because their brand is outdated, their website is terrible, and people don't want to engage with them because they don't look like they've been progressive. So I think brand, I definitely agree with you, Colin, around cash flow. Like, we're a growing business too, and you're trying to do it all as a founder, but you definitely need to know when it's time to focus on more of the company brand rather than your personal brand, and how that brand's going to help you grow not only your business but your headcount.
Yeah, right. What size business was that?
They have about 10 to 12 heads at the moment, and people that have been there for quite a long time. Right. And they're struggling to attract new, shiny, fresh blood into the business because of how they're perceived by the market, even though they're actually quite a good business.
And how are you going to elevate that for them?
Yeah, so the brand initially was on hold. Brand has become more of a priority. And it's, I guess, sending the right message out too. So showcasing the team, showcasing what they do. They are actually quite a big agency in Melbourne, and they're just kind of flown under the radar for quite some time. So we are actively showcasing who they are on social media. The website definitely needs some attention, which is obviously not a small investment either. So we're going through a process now of a brand refresh and a new website, but in the meantime, showcasing a bit of personality.
Yeah. I suppose it's two different strategies if you're trying to attract new talent internally and obviously attract new clients.
Yeah. And I think clients sometimes can have the same opinion. If you think about how you research any company, a restaurant, a shop, a brand that you want to engage with, you definitely have a perception of that business based on how they're presented online. Everyone goes through a consideration process before they actually reach out and contact you. So if you're not looking the part or you're not presenting outwardly how you want to be perceived, then you are going to struggle to bring in clients, candidates, and recruiters.
We live in like a review world now, don't we, as well? Like I can't
Mm.
remember, I saw a stat on this the other day and I won't repeat it because I can't remember it, but you know, like the amount, even for recruitment agencies, like your candidates and clients, that like they're checking your reviews before engaging with you now. They're looking you up online and looking you up on Glassdoor or Google or wherever they can to fact check. And so if you don't have that backstory, it doesn't matter how great the pitch is when you're in front of them, you're not going to be able to get in front of them in the first place.
Yeah. And we always say too, the company brand is your credibility piece. Like your personal brand is going to bring leads through the door, but your company brand is where you build credibility and back up what everyone's saying publicly. So you definitely need a balance of both.
Yeah, no, that's great. Just sort of moving on to my next question then. So I'll probably direct this one at you, Elouise, but what does scaling smartly mean to you?
Yeah, so we see a lot of people that take a bit of a scattergun approach, which doesn't help you in the long run. They'll do a lot of stuff and hope that something sticks or do it for the wrong reasons. We often hear, well, our competitors do this, so we're doing it, or everyone else does social media, so we're posting on social media. So marketing should talk directly to your business goals. You need a clear roadmap. You need to know who you're talking to, why you're talking to them, what your message is, and where they are. So if we had a recruitment agency that we worked with that they were moving into a new market and they had a really clear roadmap before expanding. We knew who we wanted to talk to, what channels we needed to talk to them on, and how to get in front of them. And the consultants were all on board with that strategy too. So we were able to move into a new market quite seamlessly. And it looked like we always knew everything about that market, but it was because we had a really strong foundation.
Yeah, great. Laura, can you add anything to that?
Yeah, I think and you know, we definitely went through this when we launched Lotus People. You know, we really wanted to focus on organic growth, like adding headcount because we were ready, because we had too much work on, you know, so that we could then share that work. We could give consultants who are coming on board a good starting point. And where I see agencies, you know, in that growth period, it's like just focusing on headcount. It's like growth equals headcount increase, right? And not thinking about, well, you know, the headache and the pain that can come with adding headcount, and also not thinking about headcount in terms of like profitability per person, like per billing head or per ops head as well. Just thinking about growth in terms of like, okay, we're going from 2 people to 5 people to 10 people. And that, you know, really kind of, if you're going to scale smartly, thinking about, okay, well, there is an element to it that's got to be organic, but are we still maintaining our profitability whilst we're growing that headcount? Because that's ultimately the sign of a healthy agency. That's going to give you healthy cash flow. That's going to allow you to invest in things like your marketing and your branding and everything that you need to be a fully kind of full service focused agency. And I think as well, it's having the processes, and Colin might be able to speak to this a bit more, but like having strong processes that can support that, you know, even down to, you know, the way that you manage your CRM as a business, you know, the best practice guide of how we do things here. And I think often that growth piece can be linked to, okay, well, we went from 2 heads to 10 heads. It's a success story, but it might not necessarily be that behind the scenes. So it needs to happen in a gradual way where it can be sustained.
Yeah. So would you be setting, like, I suppose back to Lotus, would you be setting goals like revenue and profit goals before you bring on second person and third person?
Yeah, and we did definitely. And then we also kind of looked at it as like, you know, in a really simplistic way, if Sinead, my co-founder, and I had got to the point where we started working 12 hours a day again, we needed another headcount, you know? So we would be absolutely looking at that in terms of target. But if it got to the point where, okay, cool, we're not able to service at the level that we need to, we're not able to maintain the ability to bring on new business and service what we've got, we're now ready to add a headcount. But definitely the first 3 years we really scaled out in terms of, okay, well, we need to hit this revenue target to bring someone on, they need to get to this point for the next, and it scaled out in a really nice cadence, and it didn't put too much pressure on the business as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. So I suppose it can be quite chaotic. So I suppose this one for you, Colin, growth can be chaotic, but what's one way to keep it running smoothly and still moving forward?
Mate, there's many. And I think what I see with having gone through the process with EOS on our business is, and then now being an implementer, often I think what happens when we set a business up, we have a vision in our head, but we don't necessarily share it with the team because it sort of changes. We get chaotic with doing payroll, doing invoicing, trying to onboard somebody new, picking up the phone, customer complaint, everything goes on. And by sharing a vision, I mean, we use something what's called the VTO, Vision Traction Organizer, and it asks 8 simple questions. So the first one is core values. And, you know, core values are intrinsically within your business anyway. And unless we're hiring, firing, rewarding, and recognizing by them, we can sometimes get the wrong people in the business and not actually, if we've got the wrong people in the business in the wrong seat, it doesn't help with the chaoticness. The vision in terms of sharing that vision as to who we are, why we do what we do and what we do, and have a long-term plan. That way, by sharing that with the team as to why you're coming on board and what your jobs are, what your roles are, it's really, really important. And I see that in businesses that have been around for 25 years, 5 years, 10 years. The vision often is in the owner's head, and it's not actually documented and shared by everybody. And of course, if it's not shared by everybody, generally speaking, most people turn up to work to do a good job, right? But unless the vision is shared with the rest of the team, we turn up for work thinking we're doing a good job, but we don't know if we're rowing in the same direction. So that's a really key one, I think, in terms of documenting it. And yeah, it may well change, but again, it's continually sharing who we are as intrinsically as our values as an organization and where we're heading, and clearly defining what the roles and the expectations are for each individual to make sure that we're growing towards that same direction.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting one where you say where you have someone in the wrong seat. Say you've got someone in the wrong seat, like how do you manage that? Do you move them into the right seat, or do you exit them from the business if they have the right values? What do you do there?
Mate, really good question. I mean, we talk about right person, right seat. So right person, if we've got values, and everybody's got values, but unless they're clearly from top to bottom and bottom to top shared by everybody and adhered to by everybody, wrong person is somebody that doesn't follow the values or fit the values like a glove. And that's great, right? You want all those people, but if they're in the wrong seat, you can end up potentially having the wrong values because you might not like the role anymore. And we go in one stage further and say, do they get it? Do they want it? Or have they got the capacity to do the job? So going back to your question as to if you've got the right person with the right values, well, if you haven't got a seat for them that's the right seat, you know, it's as harsh as it might sound, don't keep them because you haven't got the role. It's going to affect them. It's going to affect profitability, and it's going to, you know, again, affect everybody in the organization. That's why right person, right seat. You have to have 100% of those people in the organization, because that one bad apple can have an effect on the rest of the team. That's one real big tip I've got. And again, I think I was always often a people pleaser when I first started at Airs. I didn't want to upset everyone or anyone.
Mm.
So you're doing their job, or you don't want to have that honest conversation, because sometimes I was maybe too nice. But I think nice and kind, two different things. Kind is actually letting somebody know that they might not be doing their role as they should be, and really setting those expectations.
Yeah, that's spot on. It's like it can take one person to ruin a culture. You can have 100 people that are
It's
amazing.
massive.
One person, it can destroy a culture. I've seen that.
Especially in a
For
smaller
sure.
business,
Oh,
there's
yeah.
nowhere to hide within that framework and that structure, right? And I completely agree with Colin here. And it's a really hard decision to make. You feel like you've got the right person, and we all know within agency as well how hard it is to hire, how hard it is to find experienced talent anyway. So you can try and shoehorn and make things work, but you're actually doing a disservice to your business, the people in your business, and that person, and so sometimes it feels like that cruel to be kind, but I completely agree. It might be right person, right values. We love them, they're great for culture, but we don't have the right seat for them. We're never going to be able to get them performing. And the impact of that on everyone involved is so much worse than just calling it what it is.
Yeah, that's right. They might actually find a role where they do thrive in as well, right?
Mm.
If you let them
Yeah.
go.
Can I just add to that? I mean, then you've got the opposite effect, right? You've got the wrong person in the right seat. So the wrong person's the person that doesn't actually follow the values like a glove.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it happens all the time, but it does happen in sales where you've got a big biller, that they just make up their own rules. And we as owners, I mean, I've gone through it in companies where you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. And if they don't follow the values, it's actually holding people back. Whilst it might affect the bottom line initially if you get rid of that individual or have that honest conversation if they're not following the values, it holds everybody else back. It holds everybody else back if they're not following the values. There might be the big biller or the best salesperson, but yeah, you've got to really have everybody on the same page following those values.
Yeah. Elouise, do you want to jump in with anything on that question?
I think I definitely agree with both Colin and Laura, and reflecting, I've made these mistakes before too. We've all made these mistakes before. But I think to Colin's point earlier about cash flow, having the wrong people in the right seat or the right people in the wrong seat when you are in a scale up phase where you are probably having to outlay a little bit more cost than you would normally to get to that next phase, having these people in your business just doesn't serve you. And I think right people in the wrong seat is the hardest decision to make, because you care about them and you want, that they're good people and they would probably be a good fit if you were, 6, 7 head count ahead of where you are. But you need to make those decisions quickly, especially when you're scaling. And I say we launched 18 months ago and we went from zero, or me, to 12 headcount in 6 months. And so I definitely know the pain of scaling. I've had the moments of rocking in the corner and having the wrong people or the right people, but wrong seats, as you say. And you have to make quick decisions to preserve the business as a whole.
Yeah. I mean, this flows on a really nice section to the next one. It's like leadership. So, like, Laura, for you, like leadership styles often need a change as the business scales. What shifts have you seen and what's critical?
I think, it comes down to three things. I think when you're running a business that is more than just yourself, right?
Yeah.
I think it's, leading self, like how are you showing up every day? How are you giving yourself support? Have you got mentorship? Are you outsourcing the right things? What's your resilience? How are you managing your own burnout? There's this real element of being able to ground yourself. Then you've got this element of leading others. So how are you showing up for the people in your business? How are you supporting them? How are you coaching? How are you mentoring? How are you driving high performance whilst also creating a safe, inclusive environment? But then there's this other element of like leading business, having time to objectively step back and look at your business and plan and replan and adjust the plan and work on things other than billing. And so I think as your business starts to scale, all three come into play. And for a lot of founders, especially for, recruitment agency founders, they either haven't led a business before, or, you know, for some people, they might have been high performers and not really have led other people before. And, you know, with that, then also they're probably more experienced with leading self, but not in this format. So it's a huge growth curve trying to carve out time for all three of those. And I guess the best thing that I would say is, like, early on, get yourself a mentor, like just someone even just to give you objective viewpoints that you can speak to, someone who can provide you advice, allow you to see things in a different way. And, you know, just looking at also how you nurture and look after yourself within that, because it's very, very easy. And we experienced this at Lotus as founders, you know, 18 months in, we experienced a bit of burnout. Like it's a lot. So I think, you know, having someone in your corner who holds you accountable, but allows you to work on those three elements and how to combine them is really, really important.
Yeah. Did you want to add anything there, Colin?
No, I'm nodding. I was just smiling and all of the above. And
Yeah.
I think the other thing, you know, we often talk about open, honest vulnerability within EOS terms. And going from what Laura's just said there, often you have got people that have worked for large organizations and it's the first time they might have led people. And I think being open, honest and vulnerable to your new team or medium-term team and saying, I don't know all the answers, is really key, because no one's got all the answers anyway. But if you share that vulnerability with the team to say, I don't know how to invoice, or I don't know payroll, or I don't know how to do this, often what you find, if you've got good people, right seats, people just gel together and help the organization, you know, go forward.
Yeah, I think if you show that vulnerability as well, you get a lot more buy-in from the team as well, rather than just being sort of dictating from that leadership role.
Well, I've got an article here, and I read this recently, and it's a Harvard. So they say there's 6 common leadership styles. You've got coercive, authoritative, pace-setting, affiliative, democratic, and coaching. And if I just take out the coercive, because that's very top-down, it's corrosive, and it just creates ego. I think going through different leadership styles with different people in an organization, you've got to understand your people. You know, sometimes you're going to need to, you know, be pace setting. Sometimes somebody wants a little bit more coaching. But if we go back to only COVID, I mean, I know it's not still any longer around, but that taught me so much about understanding others. And if you are coercive control at the top and it's very top-down leadership, it can be corrosive. And I don't think people want that anymore. They don't need it. And it does corrode the business and corrode people. So using those other styles of leadership, it's understanding when to adjust those.
Yeah.
Because if you want to work on your own, go work on your own. But if you're leading a team, ultimately we want to corral those to work towards a common cause.
Yeah. How do you get to a point where you can sort of step back as leader and trust the team?
Right structure.
Yeah.
Right people. And, you know, I'll go back to when I put EOS into my business years ago. I was the problem in my own business. I wasn't a micromanager, but I felt that I needed to know everything. But having the right structure is so key. You know, I hired good people, but I wasn't allowing them to be their best selves because I thought that I needed to approve everything. And you don't. You need to have the right people, but you have got to have the right structure. And it's difficult when you first set up a company because ultimately you want to chase the customer, you want to chase a dollar, or you want to sell the product, whatever we're selling. And before you know it, you have got a good service, but you've got all this other stuff behind you. And it gets to a point where you go, it's that rocking moment that Elouise said in the corner. You don't want it ever to get to that. You want to be able to trust your people, but you've got to set expectations with people and give them a chance to flourish.
Yeah. You're going to find it very hard to scale if you're not trusting those leaders in the business as well, right? So if you want to be across everything, you don't trust the team to do that, you're never really going to be able to scale.
Right. For me, if you're hiring by your values and you're leading by your values,
Yeah,
you can't go far wrong from that. And if you're hiring by your values and you've got the right people, given the right structure and put the right vision in place, people want to work towards that goal.
I
That
think
so sorry.
you finish.
No, I'm done. Over to you.
I was just going to say too, we've just been through this, I think, and I speak to founders, recruitment founders all the time that are in this situation because it's their baby. It's what they've built from scratch. And in the last 3 to 6 months, we internally have been on a journey where I've gone, I actually did trust everyone in my business, but I wasn't showing that. I was not necessarily micromanaging, but I was across absolutely everything. And I was the biggest bottleneck in our business. And not purposely because I didn't trust people, but because I thought I needed to know it all. And, you know, you're in delivery mode and sometimes you need to step out. And so I think you have to be able to equip your people as you're stepping back. You can't just be like, okay, I'm out and walk away. You need to make sure that everyone's equipped. And to your point earlier, Laura, a good biller doesn't necessarily make a good leader, and it doesn't necessarily mean they know how to lead. So for us, we lacked middle management. Everything reported into me, but it meant that I needed to train people to be leaders, coach people into a leadership position. And just because they were amazing at their job didn't mean they knew how to manage the people below them. So I think equipping your team, your consultants, your administrative staff, whoever it might be, is essential so that they feel confident enough and you can trust in their confidence to step back.
Yeah, that's a really good point. But it's also like business owners, people that actually set up the business, they might not be good people managers either. They're generally top billers that come out of an agency, $1 million biller, go and set up an agency, and as they build a team, it's very different. Very different. Elouise, just going back to branding, like in your view, what role does brand play in helping businesses grow sustainably as well?
Yeah, so I think sustainable growth is such a big thing. Like you can throw tens of thousands of dollars at marketing and get a whole heap of leads in, but it doesn't mean you can service them. It doesn't mean that you can sustain the volume. So it needs to be done in a way where, Laura, I think you mentioned before with Lotus, you wanted organic growth. I think you should always start with organic growth and start by getting the foundations right. We always say that, and I think I said earlier today, the company brand is the credibility piece to all of your other activity that's going on. So you need to go back to basics, make sure that you've got your right tone of voice, make sure that you know who you're talking to, make sure that the brand is consistent and sending the same message out, and that your team is then echoing that same message.
Yeah, nice. Laura, can you add anything to branding?
Yeah, I mean, it's everything in my business now, right? And I'm a one-man band and don't have any plans to grow headcount, but it's 100% of where my business comes from. It's extremely important that, people experience what it feels like to work with me before they have. This is like one of the most incredible tools that we now have access to, even as individual sole traders, or if you're in growth mode. You've got the ability to be able to show your audience what your service is going to feel like before they've experienced it, right? So it's a huge opportunity. I ran a series recently on LinkedIn, a top biller series, right? And it was just interviewing top billers within recruitment agencies or people who have gone out on their own or have agencies. And then one of the things that kept repeatedly coming up when I asked them the question of like, is there anything that you would have done sooner or done differently throughout that journey? Like the majority of people's answers were, I wish I'd started working on my brand sooner. I wish I'd utilized the tools earlier because it now brings me so much. And I think for anyone, like whether it's personal brand or company brand, I think if you're starting out or you're in your first 6-12 months at the moment, like this has to be a key part of your strategy because it absolutely will define your ability to grow, the pace at which you grow, the pace at which your reputation grows in market. And I think a lot of people wish they'd put this focus on it a lot sooner than they have. And then, you know, once you're a bit more established, you've got 5, 7, 10 people, you know, it's a lot harder to, not harder, but like it then becomes a real job to start to think about, okay, who are we? What's our brand? What are we putting out? We have to then train that into people. Like if you've got a very strong identity at the beginning and a plan around that, it's easier to feed that into the people that are joining you rather than to have to start it from scratch once you're already at 10 people. So I think it's just start it as soon as you can would be my advice for any business owners, anyone who's wanting to grow.
Yeah. Like how would you say how would you stay consistent with the brand and the identity of the business?
That's probably one for Elouise over me, because I tinker around with my LinkedIn. And I have
I do it all the time.
for it, but I'm one person, you know. I think that's probably bigger than my skill set to answer.
I think when you, like you say, Laura, when you're starting out, and we did the same thing, we built our client base off my personal brand, and we definitely recommend the same for agencies that are getting started, and that your personal brand should be a sales activity. It's not something that just gets done ad hoc. So it needs to be, your personal brand and your company brand need to be consistently managed. And that is hard when you're wearing multiple hats. But your personal brand should always be considered a sales activity, not a marketing activity. And your company brand, and I guess creating that consistency comes down to having really clear guidelines. We often, if we start working with someone, we follow every single recruiter in that business, and we sit there and cringe sometimes when they're not using the templates or they're not using the brand guidelines or whatever it may be. But it's also just educating the team on the why, the what's in it for them, and what the consistency will bring. And then making sure that everyone's on the journey, which was mentioned before. Like you need to make sure everyone's bought into the vision and the why behind it, and then everyone will get on board.
Yeah. What we're seeing quite often at the moment, like businesses looking to sort of diversify and go into new markets. Like it's been really tough. Like last 12, 18 months, the market, you know, we're seeing tech recruiters get into like healthcare, for example, because that's a growing market. Everyone wants to get into it at the moment for some reason. And how do you keep the consistency of the brand when you've got growing teams, but then even when you've got a new market you're going into? How do you keep that consistency?
Healthcare's a topical one because I had this conversation with someone yesterday. They're a generalist that do marketing, sales, customer service, ops, and then all of a sudden they're doing healthcare. And so it is difficult, especially when you're spread across so many different specializations, to maintain consistency.
Yeah.
So I think from a brand perspective, you have to rely on the core brand with slight tweaks. Mayday, for example, have done this quite well, is that they have a core brand, but they have a different color when the specialization maybe sits outside their core. So it still looks exactly the same, but in red or in blue as opposed to the pink. So there's definitely ways to achieve it, but I would also caution moving into a new market. Do you have the resources and the knowledge to move into that market? Because we've gone full steam ahead with clients and built websites and landing pages and created mini brands for these specializations. And I've said at the time, are we sure? Are we all in? Are we sure? 2-3 weeks later being like, take it all down, we're not going to do it, we can't service it. So I think you have to think through first why, what you're going to get out of that specialization, and then does it actually fit within your brand, or is this a separate business and a separate brand that you need to be looking at?
Yeah, one of the mistakes that we've seen is you're launching into a new market based on one person. So you bring in one person in the business that has experience in healthcare. Well, what happens when that person potentially leaves? You haven't got a business. Unless you're going to build a structure around that person. But they also forget about, digital compliance, different processes. Like there's a massive impact to the business. But yeah, building a business or a new desk around one person it's a risk.
And it's a risk to the consultant too. Like they might be coming from a really warm desk to absolutely nothing.
Yeah, for sure.
And
no networks.
Nothing
there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you have to be really honest about that too, because we see that all the time too, that really great consultants come into a business to start a new desk and they thought that they were going to have something to work with and they're starting with nothing. So I think it's really important to understand why you want to move into that space and is it for the right reason?
Yeah. And I think, you need to know that you can back it financially for a period of time, you're going to be able to give it a really good go. And that, I definitely think as an owner and a founder, you need an interest in that business area. And it can't just also be like a financial decision of like, oh yeah, we're seeing healthcare doing really well and going great guns at the moment. I've never recruited or have anything to do with that space, but we'll just trust that we'll hire someone who can do that, unless you are going to give that person investment and they have something that kind of holds and commits them to it. Because like Elouise says, like you then become highly vulnerable if you are just reliant on that one person and you have no market knowledge and you don't have anyone you can transfer into that. So I think as well, where I've seen businesses be really successful with this is set it up as a different brand. If you're not going to be able to establish it within, and it makes sense within your current brand, or you're not so reliant on just one person. It's almost like set it up as its own brand. It can be affiliated with a business, but the person that you bring into that has a little bit more skin in the game as well, and then you are a bit more protected, I think is one way that you can do it. And that's ultimately what happened with us with Lotus People. Like we got investment from sustainability. They were an IT and tech recruitment agency, and we made a very conscious decision, all of us up front, that Lotus would become its own brand, because at that point 10 years ago it didn't make sense to have an IT and tech business alongside a business support agency, right? And it felt like a watering down of their brand and a confusing way for us to enter the market. So we set it up as a completely separate brand that had affiliations, and we got all the benefits of that, as joining their office and the back office operations and all of that, but it very much stood as its own thing in market.
Yeah, that's a great example, actually. Colin, just back to probably what you started with at the start, like what are some of the biggest financial pressures that come with growth?
Two standouts, or three, maybe. I think payroll's one. Obviously, staff overheads, payment processing times. And what I mean by that, invoices outstanding. I think that often gets overlooked. We say it's a 20 grand invoice. You've got to understand your payment terms. If it's 5 days, great, because you're going to get it within the week. But if it's 30 days or end of month payment terms, it means very different. So it is going to massively affect the business. Just look at revenue. Not everyone understands revenue and cost. It's we might stick an invoice out for 20 grand, but what's the true cost of that? What's the overheads that we've got to take out of that? So just using those simple maths. I was shit at maths at school, by the way. But my point to that is just understanding revenue and what it's going to cost you.
Yeah. I think like going back to payment terms, like we often see this, consultants, they're negotiating a deal on 7-day payment terms. A client wants 30 days end of month. Yeah, the consultant rarely has the confidence to negotiate the on costs, increasing the on cost to cover the fact that you're funding it for 30 to 60 days longer than the 7-day payment terms. And potentially having a structure in place for when you've got bigger teams to do that as well.
Yeah, and that comes back to process as well.
Yeah, that's right.
We often see in businesses, owners say they don't like process, but they actually do. They've already done the process, but they've done it that quickly. They just haven't had time to actually document it. So when you document that process, and then you can set that expectation or put some rules in place for everybody else, it makes it so much easier to then be able to scale and grow your business by actually putting it down. But yeah, that payment piece is massive, because unless it's no good in someone else's bank account, you've got to get it in yours, because you've got a lot of overheads to cover. It's understanding what those costs are.
Yeah, and like going back to that process, when you do have those larger teams and you've got consultants doing their own process, negotiating their own terms, their own rates, charge rates with clients, generally the owner's got no visibility of what the margin truly is until month end or end of financial year. They're like, well, revenue's looking awesome, but the profit is not, because they just got consultants potentially going rogue and just doing side deals because they haven't really got a clear process or guidelines what margin should be or what pay rate should be, specifically around the contract side.
Oh, 100%. You've got so many overheads when you look at the on cost.
Yeah.
P&L insurance, you've got on costs for superannuation, payroll tax. Let's not start on that one. But there's so many in understanding what that is. And if the payment terms are extended, what that leakage or wastage is within that margin, because your 20% or 15%, whatever the number is, could end up being 2 or 3. It's a big difference, and it's understanding that.
Yeah. Elouise or Laura, you got anything to add on that question?
I think it's really easy at the moment to have a bit of tech stack creep. So there's so many nice, shiny, amazing rec tech tools out there.
Yeah.
And salespeople, I find, are the easiest people to sell to. They'll buy into nice, shiny new things. But you do need to take a step back at a certain point, look at everything that is in the business, and does it actually have a use? Is there return on investment, whether that is time, efficiency, cost, whatever it may be, and streamline. And again, we see this a lot with marketing tools. We're like, why do you have 3 things that do the same thing? And start stripping that back. And you'll also find your teams are signing up to things that the business isn't necessarily signed up to. So everyone's operating a slightly different way. And, you know, I had someone say to me the other day, our subscription costs or in our operating expenses used to be 10 or 15 grand, and it's now 75 grand. And it's because they've bolted on all of these things that no one has stopped and taken a step back and gone, okay, what are all these tools and where is there an overlap?
Yeah, no, good. Just like the last question before we go into the Q&A, looking ahead, like, and feel free anyone to answer this, and I suppose you could all answer this, but what's the biggest opportunities and risks for businesses wanting to grow over the next 2 to 3 years?
I think
Ladies first.
following on from Elouise's point, and I wholeheartedly agree, and a lot of the consulting work that I do with clients around this is like one of the biggest opportunities, I think, is also one of your biggest risks is around your tech stack. It's like there is so much incredible rec tech out there. People are spoiled for choice and also overwhelmed. And what I have seen as well is even, you know, the most established agencies, that it's just like, okay, well, let's add that one on because someone said it was good and we saw a good demo of that. And, you know, if you can build yourself like a really incredible tech stack that saves your consultants time, creates efficiencies in your business, frees up the time to really focus on that human element. And I don't want to be cliche in saying that, but really actually freeing up your consultants to be able to just be out there meeting people, building relationships, because a lot of your admin's being managed. Amazing, huge opportunity. The risk that comes with that is the overwhelm. There's so much choice, the overlapping of tech stacks that do similar things. Change fatigue for consultants around, you know, we're adding another system, we've got something else to learn, we're not using that anymore. And actually just having all of this stuff that isn't really being fully utilized and being built into processes. So, you know, I would say that's a huge opportunity, but it needs to be managed well. It needs to be consulted through. You need to build strong processes around it. You need to embed each thing into your business, make sure it's giving you ROI before moving on to the next thing. And I think it's managing that in a really process-driven way. Yeah.
I agree, Laura. Tech and AI is definitely an opportunity, but it's something that's such a risk too. And I think to add to that is if you are bolting on all these different platforms and they may be amazing and you are overwhelming your consultants, they lose trust in the process and they lose trust in the vision for the business too. So you need to make sure that it is actually benefiting them. It's rolled out in a way that they know how to use it and they're comfortable, and that they're still on board with your overall vision and they're not losing that along the way.
Mm-hmm.
I thought we were actually going to get through a webinar without AI, actually.
No,
Literally, everything we talk about, though, is
we got
AI.
there.
I know, I was like, damn it, we're talking about AI. No, thank you. So I just want to throw it out to everyone. We're open to taking questions. If anyone wants to write a question in the Q&A section at the bottom of the screen, please do now.
It's that moment.
I know.
Gotta wait, see if anyone typing.
Ask us anything. Well, don't ask me anything. Ask panel.
It's funny how you can bring together three people who like work in different angles of the market, and we're all just sat here like,
Yeah.
because your clients and agencies coming up with, and even I think everything we've spoken about today in terms of growth, like I'm seeing this, this same challenges for established agencies as well. So, I think it's a worthwhile conversation, regardless of whether you're, 6 months into your business or 10, 20 years in. I think
100%.
the rate of change there's been that, there's so much work to do to stay on pulse and to stay relevant and to grow, I guess.
Yeah. Everyone's just trying to find a way to grow at the moment.
Yeah.
It's tough.
And it's been a tough market to grow in. Someone said to me the other day that it's the toughest recruitment market since the GFC. And I probably wouldn't disagree with that either, but that's a pretty low market. And so it is a tough time to be growing and scaling a business.
Yeah, it's been a long and arduous one, I think. It wasn't like a full bottom out. It's just been a little bit of a grind for everyone for a long time.
But sorry, seeing that question to you guys, what's the biggest learning I mean, it hasn't been a buoyant market, and it's not just recruitment that's not buoyant, it's the whole economy. Like, what have we learned from that? Because I think there's some massive learnings for people to go forward.
I think it's right to your earlier point, right people in the business is a big learning. Came off the back of COVID where you had way too many jobs and you couldn't fill them quick enough, into a market where you had to really grind. And a lot of people lost headcount during that because they had put people on during a really hot market that then couldn't keep up with a slow market because they didn't want to BD, they didn't want to get on the phone, and they didn't want to grind. So I think definitely having the right people has been a learning, but also you need to make strategic. I know from a marketing perspective, we almost decimated our business in 24 hours when COVID came because we work only with recruitment agencies who also were having a tough time. But the clients that we did keep, they might have scaled back, but they kept the lights on so that when things got busy, they could push forward stronger. And so I think not having a knee-jerk reaction to the immediate market is really important too, and thinking through the future.
What are you seeing, Laura, in terms of the companies that are successful, that they're getting out of this hole? What are they doing?
Well, to give you some context around that, pretty much, apart from it started changing the last couple of months, but over the last 18 months, everything I've been training on is business development. Yeah. I think what I've seen people do is really upskill. What people are doing well is really upskilling and developing their people across that business development piece, but actually looking at, okay, well, what have we already got and are we maximizing it? And do we have processes in place to ensure that we're providing excellent service and that we're keeping in touch? And I've actually seen people do a lot of process development of like, our consultants feel a little bit lost. What this has actually led us to is to realize that we don't have a strong process around a BD pipeline, call cycle, what that looks like. We don't give our consultants enough tools to be able to add value to their clients. And so I think the agencies that I've seen kind of really start to flourish again through this time have built really strong processes. They've trained their teams, and they're also really, and I saw this in COVID as well, like really thinking outside of the box of how they can add value to their clients and have that point of difference in being there in the market. And then I think as well that brand piece. It's like if your strong brand is maintained, people want to work for you. You're going to get the right people in the right seats. You know what your values are. Like, I think, it's ultimately like wrapped up in all of that strong leadership, just showing up every single day, even though it's been really hard, keeping it consistent, looking at where your team need upskilling, building strong processes that allow people to get through, even though they're not seeing the results straight away. I think ultimately it comes down to the depth and the width of your ability to lead a team.
Start at the top, right?
Yeah.
No, that's great, guys. We haven't actually got any questions. So I just want to
Everything.
I think we've answered all their questions, clearly. Thanks so much for joining me. Thanks for everyone joining. Colin, Elouise, Laura, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
See
Bye.
you. Bye.